Welcome everybody. We're back with a Summit podcast. We took a little 1 week hiatus, but that's better than 4 or 5 or even 16 weeks. We're here today with Paul Whissel. We're at the Content Room here at 95 India Street in Portland, Maine. Paul is, I have to read his bio because he's a fairly accomplished guy. He's a physical therapist with a board certification in sports PT, all right? He's the owner of Root Cause Physio, a company that helps athletes and active people restore and preserve their physical health. So he's getting people back to health. Prior to that, he spent 6 years, 2016 to 22, working for the Boston Bruins as director of performance and rehab. So we got a few questions for him about the postseason, but we'll get to that in a minute. Before earning his doctorate, he also spent time in the strength and conditioning field. He's originally from Buffalo, New York. Hopefully not a Yankee fan. We'll touch on that too. Probably a newly anointed Red Sox fan, but we'll talk about that. When he's not working, you'll find him helping his wife, Erin, with farming duties. And we'll put his link to his website, which is rootcausephysio.com, so you can check Paul out when we're all done kind of beating him up here a little bit. But Paul Whissel, thanks for coming. I appreciate it. You got a lot going on. You're kind of new to Maine. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first off, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Sure, thanks for coming.
Yeah, finally being able to connect. Yeah, I'm a physical therapist, new to Maine. We bought here in 2019, right before the pandemic, which was excellent timing. And my wife is from here, so it was always kind of the goal to settle back here. And yeah, once the sports thing ended, it was time to kind of settle down and transition into an easier, simpler lifestyle. So here we are.
Yeah, so you spent 6 years when you with the Bruins. Let's talk about that. That's one of the most exciting things.
Sure.
Guys, with the Bruins, we're gonna talk to him about that stuff. But you're traveling with the team, right? You're on the road. Just like you're everywhere the players are.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a busy lifestyle.
It is. That's it's the main reason I'm not there now. It's a big commitment. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just it's a grind for probably 10 months of the year. It's 7 days a week, and you're there early in the morning, and on game days you're there till 11:30, 12 at night. The full travel schedule it takes its toll. It's always worth it being a part of that camaraderie and that group, but a lot of sacrifices go with it, and that's kind of what led me to think things through and think of what the long-term goal is and how sustainable that was. And my wife and I kind of reached the consensus that it was time to make a shift. So
yeah, it's got to be kind of crazy. I mean, paint a picture for me. It's not like, Bergeron gets hurt. Hey, go back and see Paul. You must have had a staff. It's not just like you're back in there saying, hey, I don't know, we'll get you back on the ice here in a couple of days or something. I mean, there's a lot to it.
There is. It's a big group. A lot of hands on deck to kind of support the overall goal. I was brought in as a director of performance and rehab, so I oversaw our strength and conditioning, our ATs, our physical therapists, and our nutrition program. I was given that role to try to integrate things more and try to progress our departments and what we were doing in those areas. So with that said, I was able to hire and bring on some people that were really talented and really skilled in those areas to complement the things I wanted to accomplish. So yeah, there's a lot of people involved. There's docs at every game. There's multiple medical personnel there to assist. So
crazy.
Yeah, once someone comes off, there's a whole assembly line of checks and balances for them to evaluate and make a decision if they can go back or get them the help they need.
Well, not unlike, I guess my biggest familiarity with it, I look at like a Major League Baseball pitcher. Mm-hmm. They've got the days before they throw, they're very regimented in what they do. Then the day they throw, and then they're right into their post game or their recovery and all the things that they do that are very regimented until the next day they throw. Probably the same thing for hockey players, right?
Yeah, and that's pro sports in general. I think it's all about recovery, trying to manage as best we can the demands on these athletes, and then making sure we provide the resources to help them, whether that's sleep, whether that's nutrition, whether that's hands-on care, giving them what they need to be successful when they have to play or perform again, which sometimes the turnaround's quick, especially with the travel.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite memories from that stretch, 2016 to 22? So what was it, maybe one of your favorite things from working with the Bruins?
Probably the most exciting was the 2019 run to the Cup.
Yep.
That was also probably the biggest heartache, losing in Game 7 at home.
Yeah.
That was a tough one, but that group was very special, and that playoff run was just wild. It was a great experience, and having family be able to attend some of those Stanley
Right.
Cup games, and having my wife's family close by in Maine, they got to go to a few, and I brought my parents up. So
Yep.
a lot of great guys on those teams too that I still keep in touch with. That, you know, it was just a special group, and that year was probably my favorite. The bubble was very memorable. We
Yep.
had to go in the bubble for COVID.
Oh, yeah.
That was, I think we were there 7 weeks ish. But yeah, a lot of cool experiences. We got to meet some cool people that made visits into the locker room. So
Yeah. Now, like during the game, where are you typically?
I stayed in back. I was
Yeah.
usually rehabbing injured guys during the first or second period,
Yeah.
and then there for triaging anyone that came off the ice. So during a typical season, if guys don't play, they get a morning treatment kind of during our morning skate process, and then we see them again during the game to kind of follow up and add whatever we need. So
Hockey's. I mean, you've seen some ugly stuff. I'm just while I was doing that, I'm like kind of cycling through my mind. So some of the things,
Yeah.
like dental stuff aside,
Oof.
like that comes into that space. It's like, hey, you know,
Sure.
and those guys are crazy too. They're like, what? Probably like, dude, you know, what's it gonna take to get me back
Get
out
me
there
back out there. Exactly.
tonight?
Exactly. No, exactly. Exactly.
They're some of the toughest customers around hockey players.
Chara with a broken jaw during the Stanley Cup was one of the craziest turnarounds I've seen. Lots of 50+ sutures for skate lacerations, and they still go out there. Bad facial lacerations. There's a lot.
Was there a time when you just started like kind of gave up, saying, "Hey, you probably shouldn't"? And okay,
within a safe parameter.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to know the guys, and these guys are wired differently, and you have to respect and appreciate that. So I think your ability to push the limits, so to speak, with some of these guys, once you get to know them more, you get more confident in making those decisions, but always obviously with their safety first and foremost.
Absolutely. The concussion stuff is tricky though, right? I mean, some of those guys, they get hit hard.
That is, the collisions in hockey obviously are very fast. But the other thing too is a lot of the benign hits, the things you wouldn't really expect to be problematic, end up being some of the worst.
Really?
They kind of get hit, and it doesn't look like much, but guys will come off and present with symptoms. But fortunately, in pro sports in general, they've done a great job at coming up with some screens that we can use and some more objective measures to kind of gauge where someone's at. Then all the athletes do preseason testing, so we have a baseline, so we can kind of use something to really see. Because again, these guys are wired to want to get out there, so it's our job to protect them.
Did you play?
I played hockey up until high school. I switched over to basketball as the winter sport in high school. But when I was younger, I did. I loved it.
Well, cool. Was it hard for you watching the playoffs this year? The playoff short stint after winning that many games? Like everybody's fired up for a great playoff run, and all of a sudden, poof.
That was disappointing. I did feel for them.
Crazy.
I think we're all kind of hoping for that farewell ending for Bergeron, if it is the last, or Krejci, or some of these older guys that have had just outstanding careers. So I did feel for them. There's a lot of sacrifice that these guys make to do what they do, and you just hope that it ends the way that everything's planned to end. But it just shows how hard the playoffs are. I mean, anything can happen. The regular season was historic and incredible, but it's it didn't go the way they anticipated, and I feel for them, but that is sports. That's what makes it entertaining.
Well, we talked about this before the camera came on. I was like, it's going to be kind of challenging not to ask Paul like detailed questions about athletes and everything. Hey, what is this? But we stay away from that, kind of a man code thing. But I do have one question for you. Chara ran the Boston Marathon. What did you think of that? And being in your field, you're like, here's this guy that's got to be over 7 feet tall with skates on, right?
With skates, probably. That's fair,
like he's 6'9" or something like that. He's a big dude, even as hockey players go, height-wise, right? And now he dropped. I can't remember his time, but it was legit.
Yeah,
at Boston,
around 3:30, I believe. Yeah, it was a very solid time. Yeah,
he was out there laying it down, right?
I'm not surprised, knowing Z and his work ethic and dedication to his physical health. That did not surprise me, but that does not undersell the accomplishment that was. That to move that frame for that distance and that time is pretty incredible.
Right. It makes me think of another question as I was driving in here. Some of the things I wanted to ask you, and some of these guys, like you see, I don't know who it was the other day. Brock Holt retired baseball, right? And then I saw a picture of him on Instagram with a golf club, and he's like new goal, scratch golfer, right? And some of these guys, who's the baseball pitcher that's John Smoltz, scratch golfer, or I mean, like pro level golfers. These guys, they step from one sport into another, and they're just good at it. Now, maybe they've played it a lot, or they were Tom Brady, right?
Sure,
was I think a heck of a basketball player. If I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong.
I believe
but
basketball or baseball. Maybe.
One of them, yeah, it was baseball, but you know. These guys are no joke. So is there something in their DNA, or is it like, what is it where these guys, then maybe they're just pure athletes? You know, can you speak on that for a minute?
I think there's a genetic component. I think these are very genetically gifted guys, especially how quick and explosive they are. I think a lot of that we can influence through training, but I think a lot of that is a God-given thing. I also think their dedication, most of them have greater than usual dedication to their craft, and I think between that and the genetics, it leads to exactly what you're saying. They can
throw in a mindset.
Yeah, they can do a lot of things very, very well. I saw that with our guys. We had some outstanding soccer players, racket sport players, golfers.
Did you see? You must have seen a trend too. If you're around it, the guys that are there early, you know, there's usually on any team. There's usually some guy that's.
Sure.
Who was it? Maybe it was Kobe, right? You hear stories about Kobe, like, you're not beating this guy to the gym.
No.
You're not. He said in a point, I was in Tim Grover's book, I think. He said, went to meet him one day, and he said, meet me at 6. And Kobe comes out, he's all full of sweat. He's been there since 4 a.m. You know, you're just not beating me. You're not going to outwork me.
No.
You see a lot of those kind of guys at the pro level?
You do. I think there's a balance within a given team. I think there's some guys that rely more on their gifts and their sort of inherent abilities, and other guys that have to work a little harder at it. And those guys tend to be the guys that are there early. It's a healthy mix, but I think in a team like Boston that had such great leadership and had an older roster to kind of set an example, I think it leaned heavier towards the follow by lead and kind of mirror what those older players that have had such great success were doing, and coming in early and, you know, learning how to be a pro, making those part of your daily routine, or making those habits a priority.
Not unlike the Celtics, wearing the colors for the Bruins is a pretty big deal.
Sure, yeah.
You know?
No,
those guys, they don't take it lightly.
No, exactly. Yeah. There's a history of winning in Boston.
Yeah.
Being from Buffalo wasn't always good for me.
Yeah, right. Especially on the football scene. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, cool. Good stuff. I could talk for hours about that and what it's like to be around professional athletes and all that kind of stuff. And that's a really cool part of your resume. I like that. But let's kind of switch gears here a little bit. So you got to a point where you're like, okay, well, it's time for something different. This travel thing is wearing on me. People think that traveling is just glamorous and a lot of fun, and you're in a lot of different cities, but it's a grind, right? And so you kind of had a mindset shift, and maybe it was time to settle down, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's the travel. I think kind of being in an oversight role and having to, there's a lot of personalities to manage. There's a lot of things that happen in sports, and people are functioning on not a lot of sleep and a lot of stress all the time. So combination of those things, and just realizing that time with family was becoming more and more of a priority with me, especially with older parents, and just being away for that long. I think COVID kind of gave time for reflection on that, and just made me realize that I don't know how sustainable it is. So yeah, the travel was a big piece for me. It's certainly easier than normal travel. We had a very easy process of flying to the places and staying at great places, but it's just being gone. It definitely takes its toll, and there's not a lot of time to take care of yourself.
Did your wife travel with you?
No, it was strictly just team. For occasionally, if there's like a big game or something, people might have family meet them there. But most of the time, it's just the guys.
Yep. So back to Maine, living in Falmouth. Okay.
Correct.
Talk to me about what's next.
Well, a few things. We moved to Falmouth to actually get some land. Buying land in Boston was a financial obstacle, to say the least.
Is there any land in Boston?
Exactly.
It's all concrete.
No. So we settled in Falmouth. We have 3 acres there, and we wanted land for the dogs and predominantly for my wife to start her farming venture. And then that kind of led me to take some time and do some reflection in the last year on where I wanted to go with this next chapter. I had done a private clinic before, so in Buffalo, I've kind of experienced that lifestyle and those challenges also. So I kind of honed in on doing more what I call intensives or longer meetings with clients. So naturally that fit the schedules for executives or athletes that kind of don't want to give up an hour multiple times a week and would rather have someone come in a more consolidated 1 or 2 day intensive and manage their exercise, figure out what's wrong with them, give them some things to work on, maybe talk to other providers they see or their trainers or coaches. Almost like a mini version of what my role was with the team.
Yeah.
So I really dove into that this past year, and then kind of found myself having to travel a lot again to make money. Yeah. So now I'm trying to establish more of a presence here in the Portland area. I just started offering some smaller services here that are kind of an even more consolidated version of that, and that's kind of where I'm at now. But just trying to feel it out. I'm being very thoughtful and intentional in how thin I spread myself and what kind of things I take on. So, yeah, it's a process.
Do you feel like you've caught your breath a little bit from the 6-year nonstop? Really, it's full year round. I mean, you mentioned 10 months, but you're on.
No, yeah, we have rehabs, surgical rehabs in the summer. Yeah, but yeah, I feel a lot better. I've been able to take care of myself better, which has led to better creativity and thought with some of the business stuff. I think that's so underappreciated and undervalued how much sharper our minds are when we can give ourselves what we need physically and nutritionally. So that's been a big help for me. But yeah, I recently spent some time with Stan, another guest on here, and we're in the works of putting together an adult fitness program where I can kind of have that first look at people and do my deep dive into kind of how they're moving and where they might run into troubles when they begin an exercise program, and then kind of give them some things to work on or advise the coaches that work for him on, how best to keep them healthy and give them an on-ramp for success with the program. So I'm excited about that. That's kind of the first roots I've laid locally. But
is that where you do your? If somebody comes to see you, will it be down in Sauk, or do you have your own space?
I'm using a space out of his operation, Schofield Performance. Yeah. Great. So I'll have an office in there as a first stop for people, and then with that, like I said, we do usually it's a 2-hour evaluation, and just kind of look through how they move. We talk through past injuries. I think past injuries are a great predictor of who's likely to get hurt with what. So we talk through some of the ways they've managed it and just take a look at how they're presenting now and give them the best tools to help keep them healthy as they start exercise. 'Cause I think
that's cool. Your personality is a nice contrast to Stan's.
He has a lot of energy. Yeah, I love it though.
I saw you guys' video. So he's a great friend of mine. Stan, you guys remember Stan Schofield's been on a couple of times. Schofield Sports Performance down at 15 Lund Road in Saco. So you're going to be in that building. So if you guys are looking to find Paul, you can find him there. We'll put his contact info on the notes and all that stuff. But so talk to me a little bit more in depth about what you're doing there. Like you take a guy like me, 53, banged up a little bit. When Stan will tell you L4, L5, this one, that kind of stuff. Or, geez, I've had this. Man, every time I run, if I go more than 5, my inside of my right heel, this and that, and I just don't feel like I'm able to do what I wanted to do. And I'm 53, but I'm a long way from done. You know what I mean? What if a guy like me walks in to see you guys? Where do you start? What could I hope to come away with?
I think for me, the number one thing is try to identify what might have led to some of those issues.
I got a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I think the activity itself, I think there's a common misconception with overuse things that too much workload is what caused the injury. And I think if work is progressed or we build up, appropriately, that a lot of those overuse things happen from some type of alignment issue or from increased friction in a certain area. And that's what's my job, to kind of find out why those things are happening, whether that's related to our structures, our breathing patterns, how our foot is articulating with the ground, what might be going on at our hips and pelvis. So I really enjoy that deep dive of trying to link things and give people sort of the root cause, no pun intended, but to try to give them clarity as to why these things keep happening. I've kind of honed in on that chronic pain, chronic issue niche. It's what I enjoy the most. So
you like a challenge.
I do. The more complicated, the better. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've done a lot of things, and I think I'm probably pretty typical where, whether it's a guy or a girl that, you hit 40 or 50, and I always say the wheels start falling off. And we're not professional athletes, but we might like to run 3 or 4 times a week and not feel like we got run over by a truck, right?
No, exactly.
And also, like, and Stan can attest to this, like having somebody take a look at, what we're eating, what we're doing on the days where we're not doing our running thing. How are we recovering? So if somebody's interested in that kind of thing, you guys would be a great resource.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think 2 responses to that also. I think that it's important to view exercise as always the long-term goal, or a physically active lifestyle. My job is more to be a catalyst in that process to help people be able to find success with that. But the goal is always to get people moving. I think good intentional movement is what keeps them healthy and is the long-term fix. And then the second point I'd make is just that a lot of what I do is help to remove the negatives, not so much make someone reliant on my treatment or my hands-on techniques to be the end fix for them, but to try to educate them on things that they may be doing that may be conflicting with their ability to feel good or have long-term success. So I think it's twofold. We want people to end at the exercise path, but we want to try to take out some of the choices or selections or things related to exercise that may make that challenging for them.
Word that comes to mind is comprehensive.
Very, yeah.
You're not just like, hey, take 2 of these, call me in the morning.
No.
But you probably don't have that magic pill that can fix me overnight either, right?
No, it's a process for sure.
Yeah.
One of my mentors always used a quote, something to the effect of, in the beginner's mind, there's many options, and the experts, there's few. And I think with exercise selection, it's really interesting, because I think not all exercise is the right exercise for every body and person. And that's what I enjoy, is trying to help marry the exercise selection with the person's needs and set them up for success.
Yeah, it was funny. It reminds me of a clip that we put on of Stan last week, and it was like, hey, it's okay. He was kind of being sarcastic. It's okay if you don't want to do your band program. It's fine.
Sure.
Just save enough time to be sitting on the bench and not playing, and understand that you're not, so
Sure.
Do you run into that where people are like, fix me, or they're like, some probably come in and say, listen, whatever you need me to do, I'm going to do. Just lay it out right here and let me know. As long as at the end of that, I can play.
Yeah, a balance, a healthy mix of both. I have no problem doing the hands-on work to help someone feel better and move easier to be able to do that. I just always like to encourage people that the end, the long-term fix or the end goal is always them being more active, moving within the right joints, loading their body appropriately for what their body is meant to handle. But yeah, I think it's a mix. And I've also, kind of as I've evolved as a clinician or a coach, is trying to find sort of the minimal effective dose for each person. And I feel like a lot of people with challenges, especially some of the athletes, I can write the perfect warm-up or the perfect program for them, but if they're not going to do it, it certainly is not the perfect program. So I have those conversations a lot with my clients on trying to figure out what's realistic.
What will you do?
Yeah, make me make me aware of what's feasible, and I'll try to fit that within, what works for setting you up for success. So.
Well, I work out with some guys in the morning. There's 3 of us, and I get after one guy, Ryan, because I'm like, and he's a PT, right? And I give him a hard time, like, we just literally walk in there and start deadlifting. I'm like, and Stan would be horrified if he saw what I'm doing at Planet Fitness right now. But it's 2 minutes from the house.
Sure.
But to your point, I'm gonna do it.
Exactly.
Right. So like for now in my life, I can't drive the 37 minutes down to see Stan, but I know I can drive 2 minutes and see these guys. Sure. And we bust balls and have a good time, and nobody's getting hurt. But I had to take some weight off because I'm like, guys, I leave the ego in the truck.
Exactly.
I don't want to get hurt, and I don't want to hurt the back. Ryan, he keeps me straight because he's PT. He's like, I'm not going to let you get hurt. Okay. Yeah. But I'm getting after him lately about like, nobody, like, hey, how about a couple of jumping jacks or something? Like, I'm over here doing air squats, and we do like just start ripping deadlifts. And I'm like, oh, this is ugly.
No, it's very important to do the right preparation, but it has to be something that fits. And I think, kind of to touch on what you said, the best program is the program you're doing. It's the program you're on. So, well,
and I think too, like, I don't know what your demographic is, if that's the right word, like the age range of most people that you work with, but I can tell you that, I remember a guy saying to me once when I was doing Ironman, well, you can get faster until you're about 50, and I'm like, and that was like still 10 years from now. And I'm like, oh, okay. But it hit home when he said it. I'm like, 50's coming. He was right too.
Yeah.
Because after that, it was like, oh, I'd never run like 940s before. Where are these coming from? Like, I wouldn't lace them up for any less than 5 or 6 miles. Now I'm like, 3's good.
3 sounds good. Yeah.
It's all right. Woo, look at the time. Exactly. But what would you tell somebody that's an aging athlete, somebody that's trying to just kind of stay in the game, and not necessarily be, playing men's league baseball at a high level or doing Ironmans or whatever. They just want to, like me, I always say, I want to walk the face of the earth and not have it hurt. Do we need somebody like you regularly in our life? Or is it like, hey, I went to see Paul in June, I'm good. Maybe I'll check back in October and, go from there.
Yeah, I think it's relative to goals. And I think even that decline you spoke of is very relative to someone's goals. I think a lot of the NHL athletes I see would perceive that drop-off happening much sooner once they hit 30.
Right, when they're old.
And my work shifts to more preservation with them and trying to get them additional contracts. Yeah. But I think for the older adult, I think it's completely relative. I've had people that present physical goals, whether that's to do a race or do a hike or complete a task at older ages, and I think there's always a path to get there. It's more dependent on how much the person's willing to get in to make that a reality. But I do think that speaking on the services themselves, we don't do movement checkups a lot. We don't. We tend to be more reactive when things start hurting. Then we want to figure it out. But I do think kind of what you said, just having an evaluation and seeing structurally what your body's best suited to do and making it a priority to do those things will hopefully alleviate the need to do that reactive care. But it's certainly something that someone should initially do. And then most of the people I see, it's kind of on a, let me know when you need a tune-up or a follow-up. I try not to make people reliant on the service itself. Right. Give them answers. And it's another challenge. I realize that my services are a higher ticket, so to speak, item. So I am sensitive to that, and I try to be respectful that people are making an investment. I try to make it very informative for them, and then give them solutions that don't necessarily have to involve that ongoing expense. So
I always say to the high ticket comment, my and I said this to Stan in our podcast. I said, you guys aren't the low cost alternative, and he makes no apologies for his pricing. No. It's where he's got to be, right? But it's like, so if you asked me when I was laying on my back in the middle of COVID with an L4, L5, L5, S1, like, hey, dude, the guy's saying to me, you got the back of a 50-year-old. And I'm like, well, I got to live like this? Yeah. I would have given you my checkbook. Okay. So to your point about high ticket, yeah, it's high ticket. But I mean, if you're in a point where you need it, like, is it really?
No, I completely understand. And Stan actually had a really good perspective on that I've borrowed myself to talk to people. But He always says it's only expensive if you don't get the result. And I really liked that mindset or that outlook on it, because I think to your point, if you could spend money knowing that you're going to avoid these things, or that you're giving yourself the absolute best chance to avoid these things, that it isn't expensive, because those things have a cost, also a very large cost in your productivity and in your life. So
yeah, it reminds me of the thing I saw on Facebook or whatever, Instagram. A guy said, "Hey, if I gave you $1 million today, would you take it?" And they said, "Yeah." If I gave you 10 million,
love that, yeah,
but you couldn't wake up tomorrow, would you take it? So, and he said, "So your life's worth $10 million. Why don't you live like that?" Right?
Exactly.
So yeah, we throw money at stuff to try to make it go away, but a lot of us aren't willing to do probably some very simple stuff during the week, whether it's just a morning stretch routine or, moving your body for 30 minutes, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, something like that. We don't do it.
No.
I say we because I've been in that spot before too.
Same.
But, yeah. But one of the things I've noticed too is everybody's getting older, right? Mm-hmm. The baby boomers are, my folks are getting older, right? So, my mom had a new hip this past year. So, I started thinking about, like functional strength, like, just simply getting down on the floor and getting up, bending down, so do you find that you see a lot of people that in the aging population where they're struggling with that kind of stuff and you're able to help them, or is that not your
No, absolutely.
wheelhouse?
I especially prior to my role with the team, I had a clinic that saw a lot of that population.
Yep.
And I think it kind of gets back to that goal-dependent mindset. Everyone's goals or challenges that they face are going to be different. I think for me, the thing I take pride in, or the thing I enjoy the most, is trying to create the solution for that person and that body type. And that's, I think, we think we're all different. I remember working with Charlotte Ballet at one stop, and when I worked with that population, they were convinced that their bodies were completely different than any other body, and dancers have this very unique, which they're incredibly gifted athletes, but a body is a body, and we learn the structures, and we learn the physiology, and we learn the relationships, and as bodies age and get more stiffer, there's different challenges than when bodies are younger and can produce more force, but it's just about managing where that person's at. So the other side to it is I enjoy the conversation with that clientele a ton. Some of the best friendships I had in Buffalo and the best conversations I had were with that demographic. So I can honestly say I enjoy that as much as the athletes, maybe even more at times too. So
yeah. Well, it's cool. What you're doing is neat. What you've done is neat. Like I'd like to have followed you around from 2016 to 22 just to see kind of the things that you saw. Do you have any it must have felt great, like if you were working with someone, a high-level athlete that had an injury or was off the ice, right? Mm-hmm. And then to see them go back out and have success. I mean, there must have been some times where you were just like, yeah, this is where I need to be.
It feels good, but it's also you have to remember it's the player. Like they're the ones doing the work and putting in the time and going through the pain and sacrifices. Our job is to be a guide in that process. The end goal of them getting back to doing what they love is what's rewarding. But you have to keep in perspective that it's because of them, and you're just playing a small role in that process.
Do you still get calls from guys that are like, "Hey, I got this going on. What do you think?"
I do. It's a little challenging because in season players are supposed to go through their clubs for things. So there is a certain line or boundary you have to respect. But I do see guys time to time or make recommendations for guys, and then the off season is usually when I'm really busy with that population when it's fair game. So, but yeah, it's watching them too come into the league as a younger sort of undeveloped raw athlete, and then evolving both on and off the ice as leaders in the locker room and finding their voice and just growing into an NHL pro is really special too. That's something I miss from Boston. We had some really good young kids come up through that team and become leaders, and I love watching them, and seeing them have success now is really cool.
Yeah. Do you sit and watch the games now?
To be honest, no.
Too much.
Well, I had my fill of hockey for a while.
I bet.
I watched a handful, but I I tend to find myself more invested in reading and learning at this point. I think that was during the grind, you're so tired and you're kind of, your ability to retain information isn't as good. So I pride myself on learning. I enjoy it a lot, and it's definitely shaped my career and given me the success I've had as my investment in learning. So I really enjoy it, and now that I have time and I can stay awake when I read and retain more, I find myself doing that in any spare time I have now. So
how did you stay sharp on the road like that? You're traveling and it's a grind, and how did you take care of yourself? Because you maybe, I don't know, my assumption is that it's not great food, but I'm picturing it like staying in a hotel, whatever, but I'm sure with a team it's different.
Yeah,
but I mean, were you able to work out and take care of yourself?
Yeah, you pick your spots. You pick your spots for sleep. I was fortunate. I would be the person that could fall asleep before the plane took off, so I'd at least get a few hours on the plane ride. And then at the hotel, we usually had a small break, maybe a 2 or 3 hour window in between sort of morning obligations and then when we had to go back to the rink for games. So there's a quick window to do a run or grab a hotel lift or something, but it's challenging because at that point a lot of times you're running off 3, 4, 5 hours sleep, and sleep's probably a more important ingredient in your recovery than adding more fatigue or stress through exercise. So yeah,
absolutely.
I prioritize that as much as I could.
Well, this is exciting. Kind of transition going forward. Had some time to reflect.
Yeah,
coming back, gonna be a Mainer. Born raised Buffalo, come to Maine, take you to a Red Sox game. Welcome. We're glad you're here. I think that the Southern Maine community is going to be better for it because I don't know anyone kind of like you around here that's doing what you're doing. So you're doing it in a great place with a great guy. So good luck to you guys.
Thank you.
I think that's something Stan's needed down there. He clearly has realized it and had the chance to connect with you. How did you know one another? Just through the business?
I had a friend of ours is seeing a PT that was good friends with Stan, and he made that introduction, and I went down and met with him in I think it was December, and we just had a great conversation. Yeah, I enjoyed him. I think he's it's hard to have a bad exactly
hard to have a bad conversation with Stan.
Exactly. No, so we connected and just started brainstorming on ways that we could kind of come together and help fill a need or a void. And I think I'm anxious to work with all the professionals in the area, and I think that's one thing Stan would echo in this program and in my services in general. I just want it to be viewed as a complementary resource. I think I feel for PTs in clinical situations now and kind of the insurance model and the time constraints they've had, and there's a lot of PTs transitioning to more cash services in the area to have a little more time, but I definitely understand that, and it's hard when you have only so much time. You have to focus on the area, and I think the sort of the void or the hole I can fill is being able to do that more comprehensive look at maybe what's causing that area to hurt, and doing a deeper dive in it. And
there's a price for that, right? And some people are willing to harbor it. It's the typical PT model is someone's working on you. Hey, get on the arm bike. I'll be right over. And then, stay on those bands. And they got 3 or 4 people going because they have to, right? Sure. It's the only way they're getting paid. Because the insurance companies are saying they bill out the insurance company for $100 and they tell them, we'll pay you 60. I mean, that's a pretty crude description of what happened, not far off exactly. Probably. So, you're all private pay?
I've always, I've never, from the time I started practicing, never gone the insurance route. But I do think, I don't take for granted. I've invested a lot in myself, and the team invested a lot in that, and I don't take that for granted. I think I've been able to build a toolbox that is unique, and I feel like that's it's kind of what's allowed me to make services that give me more time or more ability to really do that.
It's high ticket, but it's high value.
Yeah, so I think that I'm happy to I do this a lot actually. Co-treat or co-manage if there is a therapist or an option that works better for people financially, just to kind of be another asset or another helper in that process, and just maybe share what I can see to help another provider and a patient have better success. So,
if someone were watching this and wanting more info or wanting to have a conversation, weren't sure what your rates were and all that, what would they do? Would they give you a call and have a chat? Go to your website? What's the best course of action?
Yeah, start on the website,
Okay.
rootcausephysio.com. I think that the typical process is to do a discovery call with people, which is usually a 15 or 20-minute conversation, just to kind of get an idea of their needs and what they're looking for, and to see if I'm the right fit for them, if I feel like I can genuinely help them. And once that happens, then we schedule. But all the service info is on there, and a little bit more about my background and, you know, the time in sports and strength and conditioning, and then again with the Bruins, it just elaborates on some of that stuff, or kind of the areas I like to treat and that kind of stuff.
Oh, it's cool. Usually at the end of the podcast, as we wrap up, I usually kind of give someone the floor and say, hey, you know, what would you say to people in this area that are thinking about either taking better care of themselves, where to start, what to do? You know, what would you share with the people that are going to see this podcast?
Oh boy, that's a good question.
I didn't warn him about that either.
No, I think the important thing to remember is it has to be something that fits in a schedule, and it has to be something that can be sustainable. I think that sustainability is the number one factor, because, you know, if it's the best program or the best treatment or the best care, but it can't fit your schedule, it's not going to have the outcome you want. So
right.
I think that's first and foremost, and just make sure that the goal or the expectations match what you're able to commit to. I think that's another thing I enjoy doing, is kind of showing someone where they are, and kind of showing what process needs to happen to get to where they want, and then giving them information to make an informed choice of, you know, if that's realistic, or if it should be adjusted, or what it's going to take to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff. So, well, thanks. I appreciate you coming on. It's been a blast. We could sit and talk about the Bruins and all that stuff for another hour if you want, but I'll let you off the hook on that. Good stuff. Guys, this is Paul Whissel. He's going to be down at 15 Lund Road with Stan Schofield at Schofield Sports Performance. You can get him at rootcausephysio.com. If you want to look him up, I'm going to post all this stuff during the week. You'll probably have seen it by now. Paul, we got a T-shirt for you, a Summit Coaching and Consulting T-shirt for you, and a hat, okay? Now, I want to tell you something. If you're wearing that and you run into somebody like Bergeron or Marchand and they say, where did you get that shirt? Just let me know. I'll send you as many as you need, all right?
Deal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being on.
Yeah,
all right,
thank you.
Take care. Thanks. Guys, thanks a lot. It's been the Summit Podcast. We're trying to do this every week now. One of our key sponsors is Turner Builders, where we're looking to do kitchens, baths, decks, you name it. If it's attached to a house, we want to talk to you about it. We want to thank Mitchell Powers from the Content Room here at 95 India Street in Portland. He sits through all of these podcasts with a smile on his face and gives us what we need and does all of our editing. He could do that for you too. So if you're an entrepreneur, you're a real estate person, you're trying to increase your social media reach, hit him up. We'll put his contact info in the notes too, and all that stuff. You can slide it in his DMs or whatever you guys call it. So thanks a lot. We're out.